G'day and welcome back to the Roar Rugby Podcast. I'm Christy, Doran, and joining you like he does every week is Matt Tamua. A lot coming up in today's pod. We're going to speak to Simon Raiwalui, who's back in Australian rugby, which is great news, and he's taking over at the Waratahs, and he's assembled an almighty impressive coaching team, but a lot doing from an international perspective as well. The Wallabies are in Argentina, New Zealand, across the Indian Ocean to come up against the Springboks. There's been some interesting moves and happening right across the landscape with Leon McDonald exiting the All Blacks. And just today, David Nusafora news that he'll finish up at the end of the year to join a rival nation. So a lot coming up on the Roar Rugby Podcast. G'day, Matt. Lots doing here, and awesome that the Rugby Championship continues this weekend. But before that, mate, a little bit of good news for your old club, Eastern Suburbs. I was there on Saturday afternoon at North Sydney Oval when they scraped across the line to edge out the Ringarats.
Yeah, what a finish too, eh? It's super exciting. And my other club, Royals, down in Canberra in the final with the John Ident as well. So they seem to get rid of the dead wood, and they're going well, these teams.
They certainly are. And Dubby Lancaster, a hat-trick there, and scores the match winner in the 80th minute to down the Rats. But a couple of earlier really impressive tries. We saw Northern Suburbs too good for Randwick. So exciting times, and a 55-year drought goes on the line this weekend. It'll be at Leichhardt Oval. So that's exciting from a Sydney club rugby perspective. I know that West have done well in Brisbane in the Hospital Cup. Brothers up there as well. So a lot doing around the country from a club perspective. But let's jump into the Rugby Championship first of all. Is this the week that the Wallabies snap their 8-match losing streak in the Rugby Championship?
I didn't know we had that. That's Jeez.
I've thrown it on you early.
Yeah, haven't you? What? God. No, unfortunately not. I think, if anything, we might be more of a chance of second game. I just feel the Argie's coming off the break. Sure, they've travelled, but I just think the emotion, the passion will get us in the first game, and they'll see this as a chance to kind of lick their lips. They've coming off a heavy loss as well. So I think we might get them in the second game, potentially. But I think this one might be a bit tough.
It's interesting because a couple of years ago, the Wallabies first up beat Argentina in Mendoza. They lost a week later. There was changes at 10 with no Quade Cooper. There was drama with Michael Hooper leaving the camp, and there was injuries and concussions left, right and centre. So there was a lot doing on the trip a couple of years ago, and since then, far out, haven't we seen a lot that's happened? I know that the Wallabies bounced back really well against the Springboks in Adelaide, but that was actually their last win. So since then, they lose the Bledisloe, they lose last year Pretoria, then again, obviously against Argentina and Parramatta, and then the Bledisloe again. So you can see where these defeats add up. But once again, the Wallabies head there. There's a bit of pressure on them, but it's a hugely different kind of cattle and different shape to what it was a couple of seasons ago. It's remarkable, the changing kind of shape of what the Wallabies are.
Well, yeah, and dare I say it, the expectation. If I remember losing in Argentina years ago, and we were so embarrassed. We thought, this would never happen, blah, 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 blah. And then we lost to them in Gold Coast, but it seems to become far more regular than we would like at the moment. So, look, it's the nature of it, though. The game is growing, which is really exciting. I think the Argies have clearly shown that they've got a lot there. They've got some really good players there off the back of a win in New Zealand, and then obviously a semi-final appearance last year. So they're by no means a team that you can kind of take it easy on.
What was that in 2014, that defeat, or?
Yeah, that was brutal. That was the year that the whole saga with Ewan McKenzie and Kirtley and all that, and little bit of the trip from hell, which was great, but it was made better a little bit the next day at a Mendoza winery. But no, it was a rough old trip. I won't lie.
Well, okay, that's interesting because it's a decade on. Like it's a decade since that, and when you put it into context, and the journal is just coming in on me, I'm thinking far out. Like it is so true though that a decade ago, Australia going to Argentina and losing to the Pumas was a thing that wouldn't have been that common. Wouldn't have been, I know, much like the All Blacks losing for the first time in 2020 has become a common practice now. But can you put this is a big encompassing question, but what happened on that? Like, I'm sure you don't want to go necessarily into the Ewan McKenzie stuff there. It's perhaps over spilt milk, but bring us into how it kind of might have occurred that day.
Yeah, well, that was probably, I'm not the best person to ask because I had probably my worst ever knockout in my career there. And so I remember watching I don't remember, but I remember waking up the next day on the sideline kind of thing, just a little bit dazed. But look, it's a weird place because the Argentinians, there's we like to watch the game in clips and see the process and all that kind of stuff. There's still an element of emotion that goes into the game. And when you're playing against Argentina at home, that's heightened. It's not all kind of logical. And you saw in 2018 when we went down by about 40 at halftime, and then Czech replaces everyone at halftime, and then we end up winning. Like, they're odd games. They're really, really difficult, and they're very much up here. It's about weathering that storm. It's about capitalizing. It's about managing momentum. And that can be quite tough over there when everyone's yelling, when, you're getting lasers in your eyes as you're kicking for goal. And so, yeah, it's a very tough place to play. And not unfortunately, but sometimes a different Argentinian team turns up, whether good or bad. So, yeah, there's a lot going on.
Seems like there's a bit going on in your household with the
God. She's learned how to yell lately. She's not under duress, don't worry, but God.
Well, that's another one. Salta 2018. Have you been in a change room like that? Because it was just incredible, the change, the contrast in halves.
Oh, it was that was another wild week, eh? Like that. So he at halftime, I think, there's footage that's come out about it, I think, where you see Czech going ballistic. But all I remember is obviously he's losing it, but then he just goes. He starts spraying the front row and he goes, you know what? F it. You're all off. All the up. 1, 2, 3, get off. Next 3, get ready. You're not like it. It just seems so, obviously quite emotive, but, fair play to him. There was a change and then the change was valid. And I remember Sekopi Kepu setting up quite a few line breaks and it ended up working. We ended up winning the game. So, good God, that was a funny old one, that one.
Well, before he left, Laurie Fisher at the airport told us that they've got to make sure that the first 10, 15 minutes they're on and they'll have a fair idea as to whether or not they're in the contest if they can keep the Argentinians quiet in the early stages.
And it's about slowing it, making it awkward. Making it really awkward. And that's probably, look, in the past, that might have been the only thing that you had to worry about in terms of playing the Argies, but they've got a lot more to them now. These guys are all fully professional. They know what they're doing. They know how to win in New Zealand. So they're by no means a one-trick pony. But yeah, you've got to manage momentum, and it's very, very hard to measure momentum. But you've got to manage it. And when you feel the tide's about to turn, you've got to somehow slow it up. You've got to, play for points, kick for touch. And then other times when you feel like their heads are down, you've got to pick up the pace. So yeah, it's kind of the art of the game a little bit that I think comes with experience. So it might be something that we learn a couple lessons as we've got a few young game callers out there.
All right, Matt, let's talk a bit more about this weekend's fixture. Where do we think the game's going to be won and lost? Because we know Pasami's out, so it's going to see a change at 12. David Fela-Ui and Hamish Stewart, the front runners there, unless there's a selection surprise and Lenny Katau moves into 12 and perhaps like a Callaway to 13. But a change there. Taniela, you imagine, will return. that'll help out massively at tight head prop. And obviously a couple of big second rowers like Nick Frost coming back from injury too.
Yeah, I think that physical battle is going to be huge. I think any away game, it's about its discipline, its defense, and its physicality. So, yeah, I'll be interested to see what they do with the centres. Even if Fluke comes in and Len goes in one, I don't know, or Fluke even plays 12. Look, I really don't think in the past our 12 and 13 there was a big difference in terms of a ball player and a runner. I think I've spoken about this before. We've shifted that more to 10-15. So I very much think that the 12 and 13 are quite interchangeable. The only thing that you'd have to worry about is defense. But I can't see why they couldn't run 2 13s, particularly if we've got some good ball runners there. Taniela will be very well, needed. Like I said, this game, you've just got to stem the flow and the momentum off the Argies, particularly early on. But whenever they get a sniff, we've got to. You think of that game a few years ago when we lost to them. Now, Tom Wright and Geordie had a bit of a mare out the back there, and it just gives them a leg up, and then they just compounds. So, just got to be smart in this game, that's for sure.
It's such a different dynamic as well, because for so long you had that big ball runner either in 12 or 13. It was Samu probably more recently, and before that to beat Akira Jani. So I'm just concerned if you have a Fluke and Fluke and Nicotel or whoever, whatever combination it's going to be very light, isn't it? It's a different makeup.
It is, though. My assumption is that they'll play probably a lot of 5 and 6 man lineouts. Get Bobby Valentini out first phase as much as possible, and I think the more you can do that, the more you can kind of adjust for that, say, lack of size and physicality in the centres. Look, Hunter's a very physical centre, but I'd probably say that's very much more on the other side of the ball. I think attacking wise, we still haven't had a kind of a dent the line 12 in a little while. And so I think, the more we can play with our forwards, chuck them out. I've seen some coaches even chuck a 12 at the front of the line out and chuck the 6 out the line out. So there's ways about that, and as I've mentioned before, our coaching staff is a very, very experienced coaching staff, so I'm sure that they'll be thinking about that.
All right, on the other side of this, we'll go to Simon Raiwalui. Well, it's a really warm welcome to the Waratahs head of high performance, Simon Raiwalui. Simon, tell me, are you still living on your son's couch?
No, I actually moved out of my boy's apartment last week. I got an apartment. My wife told me to get out and leave them alone. So
must have been a big couch, Si.
It was an IKEA couch. I had to go to IKEA afterwards to get some furniture for myself, and as a bachelor, I got the necessities. I got a mattress, and that's it.
That's something you need, eh?
Well, Simon, if there's ever been an advertisement for IKEA, that's it right now. You might be one of the bravest men in Aussie rugby coming back after a great successful stint with Fiji, and we'll come to that in a bit. But you're taking on this role with the Waratahs a month or so into it, or a few weeks into the role. Are you glad you've stepped into it?
Yeah, I really am. When you look at the Waratahs last year, there was a lot of bad luck. And there's some good bones here. There's good DNA in terms of the super club, and I wouldn't have come to a club that I thought was not going to be successful, and I really think they're going to have a good year this year.
So tell me, what role did you have in the appointment of Dan McKellar? Obviously, a jaw card in many ways. How did that all pan out?
So we were actually looking at some different options, and then Dan actually came up as an option right at the beginning of the equation. So obviously we made the inquiries and saw if he was available, and lucky enough for us, he was available. So I'd like to say it was all me, but it wasn't me.
I'm sure there'll be many things. Yeah, I'm sure people will blame things on you that aren't your fault. So I'd take that one if I was you.
I'm used to that, so don't worry.
Oh God! And so, obviously, the New South Wales job, it's very, there's increased scrutiny for many reasons. What do you think are the unique kind of challenges, say, being head of performance at Waratahs as opposed to Melbourne or Canberra?
Well, I think it's going to be a bit of both. You got the pressure of last year, the results, but it's also somewhere that you can grow from. So we've put together a really good squad. We've put together a really good staff. That doesn't mean success, but we think we've got the right bones in place to have success. We're going to have to train hard, and we have to get the simple things right. And you get the simple. The rugby's a simple game. I always think it's overcomplicated by a lot of people, but if you get certain things right, your fitness, your discipline, and you're gonna be successful. So we've got to work hard this off season, and we're really looking forward to the challenge.
How's spending time with Fiji and being the general manager for Fiji Rugby Union for a couple of years before you stepped into the head coaching role? How's that experience and those experiences helped prepare you for this job?
Well, I know how to work with no money. We've got fantastic resources here. It's a great club, and we've got some great players. So Fiji is a different kettle of fish. You're always fighting to get the next thing, or where's the next thing going to come from. So we don't have to worry about that at the Waratahs. We have to worry about getting the team right and the culture and all that. We're going to build on that. There's going to be a big off season for us starting next week, and we're looking forward to it.
Simon, what's your the role you've stepped into? Other clubs will call it general manager, director of rugby, or whatever. What does it look like day to day in season? Are you involved in, say, selection? Are you involved in season planning? Or are you constantly looking at your depth chart for the year after? What does that kind of look like day to day during season?
It's a bit of both. That is more looking at the overall club. There's three parts. There's the men, the woman, and the academy, and we have to get that right. So obviously, there's a big emphasis on the men at the moment. Big changes ahead of the team, but it does encompass the women, the academy, making sure that the pathways are right, making sure the women are still successful, building on what their success of the last 12 months. So it's a bit of both. There's a bit. I wouldn't say I'm part of the rugby, but I'm looking over all of it.
Speaking of the pathways and looking through it, Zach Fittler, he's someone that's been spoken a little bit about recently, and the son of the great NRL player Brad does it extend to looking at the future like him, who's coming through as a schoolboy and assessing his next move?
Yeah, it certainly does. It means looking at the areas that we need to improve, the areas that we got not as much depth as required for the future. So someone like Zach is a huge talent, and we're looking at all the best talent. And hopefully be able to keep our best talent in New South Wales. We're one of the few clubs that probably get poached to quite a bit. So we've got to really make an opportunity for these players to stay, grow, and be able to perform at the highest level. So we're really looking forward to getting all those players in place.
What about the Shoot Shield? You would have been a very interested person watching on from the sidelines, I imagine, over the weekend as the preliminary finals really heated up.
Yeah, it was really good. I actually went out to the Ringer versus East match, and I kept my head down because the fans were very boisterous and had a few bevies. So it was a great day out. So there's some really good rugby out there, some really good talent out there. We just got to get that talent into those pathways and going in the right direction. So I'm sure there'll be plenty of those players being picked up by super clubs over the next couple of months.
One of the criticisms I had of the Waratahs during the year was that I felt that maybe DC didn't have quite the support that he deserved, or that would have helped in terms of his success. Obviously, with Dan coming in, he's a bit more of an experienced coach, but having that sounding board, is that something that you're going to provide for him as well, whether it be, in season, whether you're sending your strongest team to Fiji every time, or whether you're planning around certain wins? What does that look like, and how does that happen? Does Dan just have, carte blanche, or is there a conversation between you two?
Yeah, there's a conversation between us, but he's in charge of the rugby, and I think I can offer my support in terms of coaching from a GM point of view. But it's about working together, and I think, like you said, DC, he had a lot of bad luck last year in terms of injuries, and when you get a little bit of bad luck and you get the results start going the wrong way, it's hard to turn it around. So I think he suffered from that. So we've got to really work together. Those things can happen again. We've put a really good staff together, and it's my job to try and keep them together, keep the direction going the right way, and offer advice whenever needed.
From creating a list that's successful, obviously Dan had quite a strong type 5 down at the Brumbies, and the Waratahs struggled mainly through injury this year at the type 5.
Yeah.
Is that seen as an area of priority when you're putting a list together? Do you have kind of like a spine of your team where you're looking at your tight head, your open side, your 10, or do you view the type 5 as something that you can kind of build from?
Yeah, I think it's always it's part of rugby. If you don't have a type 5, you're going to struggle in a match. And I think Dan's got a great history in terms of his coaching, his prowess. Dan Palmer as well. It's going to be a real emphasis on what we do, but we want to play a certain brand of rugby as well. And I think we're going to work really hard on the set piece, whether it be line out, scrum, maul. And if you don't have that, you can't really. You like playing inside backs. If you don't have a solid platform up front, it's very difficult to play. So we're going to have to work on that very, very hard.
Well, one person you don't have to consider yet for the fly half position is Matt Tamua. I think he's very much done and dusted, so put a line through him. But
I think I'm more of a chance in the type 5 at the
moment. What about someone like a Joseph Swaley? It's exciting. It's someone to look forward to. Him coming. Is there already kind of discussions around where he might feature going forward?
Well, I think he's naturally going to fit into the centres or fullback. I've actually started watching games a bit differently since joining the Waratahs. I'm watching, worried about people getting injured, and I'm not actually watching the game. So yeah, he came off this weekend, but hopefully it's only a stinger. But he's a great talent, and he reminds me of a lot of Israel Folau when he was coming into the game. And if he can half produce what Israel did on the field, he's going to be some player. And I think he's going to probably slot into the centre or fullback, but he can play anywhere across the back line.
Yeah, he's certainly an athlete. I'm interested with, I mentioned earlier in terms of like the New South Wales job being quite a heavily scrutinised job. What role does winning, as being a priority, but then also winning with style, considering there's such a congested sports market? Is there a feeling there that, winning isn't enough, that you must do it in a way that's entertaining? Or are you starting from ground up saying, listen, we need to win, whether it be through type 5, and then we can build from there?
Yeah, I think you have to win to start off with. You have to build your team. You have to build your squad. You have to build confidence within your squad. That feeling and that winning is a habit. So you're gonna have to create it. And I think we have we obviously want to put on a spectacle for our supporters and put the best show on. But I think the best thing is for your supporters is when you win. And when you get out there and you get a result. So I'm sure that we're going to play a style of rugby that is very conducive to the public, but we also we understand that it's a W and L's a game, and if you don't win, you can lose your support. So we have to build. We're going to ask our supporters to support us. So we're going to have to get in there and really invest in them.
I can tell you, speaking of winning, you were winning a lot last year with Fiji. It's pretty much 10 months to the day since Fiji toppled England at Twickenham. I don't know if you record that, but do you miss the buzz of coaching at all?
It's funny, yeah, a little bit. I'm a pretty calm person and don't like the buzz and stuff like that, but it was interesting at times. It was hard at times. It was because I'd come from the GM role in Fiji. It was more a hybrid role of coach, and I was taking charge of the finances and stuff like that. So it was a good opportunity. I enjoyed it. I don't say I miss it. It's a different pressure. You can be lonely out there when you're not going so well. But I really enjoyed my time with Fiji. It was obviously I played for Fiji, and it was a bit of a passion as well. And it was really good. I had the boys from around March. We put in. We worked them really hard, and they gave back to us, and it was a really rewarding opportunity, but I wouldn't say it was easy.
It's a mic drop moment though, Simon. 60% win rate for Fiji in a World Cup year. I think you got to be pretty proud of that though, eh?
Yeah, I was very proud of the boys. I was very proud of what we achieved. It was the whole group, the staff, the players, they came together. We kind of locked away, and we just put our backs to the wall and said, there's simple things. We got to be fit, we got to be disciplined, and we got to play like Fijians. And when we did that, we had some success. So we got a little bit tired towards the end. The Pacific Island boys aren't used to being together for 14, 15 weeks, and you start to get a bit tired. But they were. I was proud of everyone. They're like my kids. It was a really proud moment. I was proud of them in every match, whether we won or we lost.
What do you put the results down to? Like, obviously, good things take time. Is it the fact that you had a kind of that run-in period pre-World Cup? Is it the fact that players have been playing overseas for a while and have had exposure to professional programs for longer periods of time? Like, there clearly was a step up in intensity. There's clearly a step up. I still remember of scrums going wide from inside their half, like clearly a tactical nous there. Is it a combination of all of it? What do you kind of put it down to?
I think it was a combination of all. We obviously got players playing in Europe at the highest level, big contracts. The Drua was a huge part of it. Having 40-odd players play at that level, 16, 17 weeks of the year, you can't underestimate how big that is. But we had a very simple game plan, and we had a very simple philosophy. We wanted to enjoy our rugby. We wanted to enjoy our when we were together, when we worked. We put it down. We were very simple in what we said. It was hard to explain because we sold them a story, and they believed in the story, and then we acted it out, and we would have liked to have gone further to the semi-finals and maybe the final, but we were knocked out by England in the quarters. But it was a really good moment for all of us, not just the players, but the staff as well. The staff, I can't say enough of. They were brilliant. They bought into everything, their story, the culture, and that right from the start we went to the village at the beginning for a week, and the boys lived in a big it was a big hall, slept on the floor. And it started from there. We were honest with each other, and we just lived. Big thing was we wanted to live what we said. And when when we spoke it, we lived it, and it was a huge honour for me to be in charge of that group, and it's something I'll remember for the rest of my life.
Will you be taking a leaf out of that book and taking all the private Sydney schoolboys out Western Sydney to sleep on the hard floors as well?
I wouldn't mind. It's a great, if you open yourself to those sort of things, if you're humble enough to accept it, it's actually quite a good experience. We had people that were we had Timmy Runner who's on. He's on what sort of money is he on? We had guys that were on close to £1 million, and we just said, this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it, and if you buy in, we think we'll get results. And the boys just bought in. So you never know. We can take them out to Blacktown or something like that, or put them in a hole.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Taniela Tupou and Angus Bell bunking down together out in the hall. There'd be a bit of
Taniela will be the easy one.
Belly, the challenge I take from that. But before we let you go, at the moment, Fiji taking part of the Pacific Nations Cup. They just came slow starters against Samoa, but finished very well. Is that just a part of the acceptance that a lot of the French-based players, the overseas-based players, aren't going to be able to offer up their time with all the compensation that's involved and financially the struggles of releasing players and bringing them into a tournament for a while?
It's a hard one because you've got the windows and you're allowed to, but they've got to want to do it as well. And they've got their families to look after. They've got their children to look after. They've got their futures to look after. And if a club says, "Oh, well, if you go for this, we're not going to sign you next year," it's a difficult position to be in. So it's tough. It's when I played, it was a bit easier, but it's much harder now. And the clubs they're very hesitant to let players. They can't block you. And they don't block you, but there's pressure on players everywhere they go. And you see, there's some players that it's happening in the ITM in New Zealand. They're choosing to play for ITM rather than their country, and it's tough. But it gives one man's opportunity. If he loses it, the next person steps up, and it actually creates another pathway for another player. And we're seeing that. And with Fiji and Samoa, they had some great talent playing in the games, and Fiji came home quite strong. It was very impressive. But you see that a lot of players are going to come through and take their opportunity and make themselves into a test player.
All right, so we'll bring it back to this weekend, the Rugby Championship. You know a bit about that, having been with the Wallabies in 2018 and 2019. Matt and I were reminiscing over that amazing come-from-behind win in Salta that you would have been a part of.
Yeah. I was next to the door.
What were your memories of that and maybe the halftime interchange?
It was a bit of a blur, actually. It was. I remember we obviously didn't play well in the first half, and we came in and Czech didn't show anything. He was just normal and everything, and he went in. And he just snapped and came out. And then he came out and he was normal again. I was like. But as Czech does, he knows how to read the room, and it had desired results. And the thing I remember from that game was I think Israel scored a really good try. He scored he ran a short. Yeah, he ran a short ball. He ran. So he did. He scored a great try. He did bomb one against the Argies in Gold Coast. But it was an interesting game. It was a great city to play in as well.
It was. I was just telling Christy at halftime when the whole front row just got pulled off, and it was very much you trying to keep your head down. You weren't in the firing line level. God, well timed though, as you say.
Yeah. Bernard Foley's still trying to find his jersey after Czech was tugging
it
so much.
On that, I was hoping that went, all right, Bernard's off, I'm on. He stayed on, and I didn't get to come on, so I didn't get to the last minute and a half, and I rolled my ankle. I was filthy. I thought, I'm going on here. No, but he knew what he was doing. We got the win, but I thought,
like I said, he was normal, snapped, then he was normal. So he knew what he was doing, and it was he played the role perfectly, as they say.
Well, so did the Wallabies in that second half. We look forward to this weekend's fixture, and I'm sure you'll be watching and crossing all your fingers about certain players on the field too.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm watching the games different these days.
I'm sure you are. Simon, thanks for coming on the Roar Rugby Pod.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Simon. Good chat, mate.
All right, another big test happening this weekend, and that's the All Blacks and the Springboks. It's always an amazing clash. It's going to be the first one since last year's World Cup final defeat for the ABs anyway, 12-11 at the start to France. So there's a lot already riding on it, but you take this kind of clash and you put it at Ellis Park, it doesn't get any better than this.
No, what a place. It's an absolute cauldron. Ellis Park, I think it's where they had the World Cup final in 95, wasn't it? So it's a lot of history. The Springboks would be gearing up for this, that's for sure. Obviously the week off, but they've probably put a few guys who've had their feet up since the second test against us. So, look, I think it's going to be an absolute ripper. Absolute ripper. I find it hard to look past the box, but the Kiwis always have a trick or two up their sleeve. So, well and truly, two of the top three teams in the world.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think as well the fact that the All Blacks are going there with a couple of younger second rowers. I know that Scott Barrett's back, but it's just not Whitelock, Retallick as that combination. You compare that with the Boks, and they've still got even Etzebeth, and we saw in Brisbane how immense Etzebeth was, but then when he came on midway through that first half against Australia in Perth, he just how dynamic he is, how his work rate is unbelievable, and he's carrying and his ability to keep going and keep going. That's just something that is pretty unique to him. So I think that's where they have the edge.
Did you see his impact on Sunday at the Dricus, Duplessis and Israel fight? Good God, he was towering over them as they're walking out in the UFC in Perth. God,
he would eat you alive.
Oh my God. And you see him against like kind of normal sized people. You're like, holy hecker, this guy's huge.
And the All Blacks as well, heading over there with, I don't know if state of chaos, that's probably a bit too strong, but you don't often see New Zealand rugby's dirty laundry aired. And we did a little bit with, the Ian Foster kind of era, but pretty remarkable that so soon into the Scott Robertson era, 5 tests into it, we've already seen a coach depart with Liam McDonald, didn't clear differences in philosophies. We saw that with Michael Checker and Stephen Larkin probably 5 years into their working relationship. This has happened 5 test matches into their start with the All Blacks.
Yeah, and look, probably a sign that, in a way we see where this is going. The Kiwis just have so much pressure on them, mate. And once they lose a game, the world ends. I think, violence goes up in the country and all that kind of stuff. And, sometimes when something's seen like this, at least it's seen as like they're trying to move forward. But it's a really interesting period we're seeing with the Kiwis in terms of being under a bit of pressure in the last few years, obviously with Ian Foster struggling a little bit. But then they come out and make the World Cup final and, a loss at home against Argentina. You do wonder, is there a little bit of, maybe, I hate saying the aura, because they are still the All Blacks and they deserve everything, that they get. And they've been the most successful team in the world pretty much forever. But they're having to navigate a different set of circumstances now where they're not always the favorites. And I think that is interesting. And I think you'll see, it'll be really interesting how they respond.
Yeah, and I think we all got so used to the All Blacks just finding ways to win, and that's eroded over the last 4 years. And I think of the matches, particularly against Argentina, because they're the ones that have tripped them up more often than the other, perhaps nations ranked between 5 and 10. It's not so much. We know that England's a heavyweight. We know that they're always going to challenge, and we know that the Boks will as well. But the fact that Argentina, who I think are a plucky side, have been able to do that, it has chipped away. And I know Hamish Bidwell, writing for the Roar, has been one of the few journalists that I've seen actually question and go, hang on a moment, we shouldn't be accepting these defeats like we are now. Like, we need to look harder at ourselves, because like what the Wallabies, when they used to not lose to Argentina, it's becoming every second test match these days for the All Blacks.
Yeah, definitely. And look, as I said to you, did that final last year, did that paper over a few cracks? I don't know. I know for us in 2015, it papered over a lot of cracks. We thought, oh, all is well, we've got the right coach. And then, you see a few systemic issues starting to rear their head later on. And look, I don't think it's by any stretch of the imagination the Kiwis are in that kind of dire straits, but you've seen a lot of player drain early on, whether it be the MLR or the French or the English. But I think one of the biggest things is the coaches, the drain of coaches. Like the amount of teams that are coached by Kiwi coaches that improve it is remarkable. And I think it's starting to chip away just little bit by bit. But at the same time, the Kiwis are allowed to write a reply, and I'm sure they'll figure out a way to kind of rectify that. But yeah, it is interesting. It's a different dynamic, and it's going to require different solutions.
To put a bow on that, I'm going to say the box. I think it'll actually be split, and I think both tours will be split. I reckon the Wallabies can win one there, and I think the ABs might steal one, but I think that's more likely the next week in Cape Town. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's quite funny, actually. Back in the day, they didn't used to let the All Blacks play at Cape Town because the support for the All Blacks was so high. I remember when I played at Western Province for a season, and we obviously played at Newlands, and then they used to say, no, we're not allowed the All Blacks here because so many of the supporters actually support the All Blacks, but that's changed in recent times now. So at sea level, Cape Town is a little bit different. I think if there are a chance, it'll be there. I think Russie will be aware of this, and I think he'll somehow find a way to nab the two. But I think we'll get one in Argentina.
All right, we'll see about that. Okay, so just changing gears once again. It's not just New Zealand rugby that's dealing with certain things. Of course, Rugby Australia has got a lot of balls in the air at the moment, not least the broadcast rights, which I wrote about last week, but also the news over the last 24 hours, anyway, that David Nucifora will finish up at the end of November 30 with Rugby Australia. Of course, he was announced alongside the Director of High Performance, Peter Horn, as a consultant in late December last year. So within the space of 12 months, people might be asking, well, what's actually David Nucifora done? Because he's been with Ireland up until recently with the Paris Olympics, and he's going to be joining Scotland later in the year, also as a consultant. He's been doing a couple of days a week for many, many months, and he's been working specifically with the pathways and redrawing up and certainly tweaking the player contracting model. So it's a fascinating thing that less than 12 months, Nucifora probably hailed as quite a big coup to get him back inside the tent of Australia. He's going to be out of that tent almost just as quickly.
Yeah, look, it's only normal that we focus on the fact that he's leaving, but in all honesty, I'm so happy that we had him in the tent for a little while. I actually spoke to Nussie a year ago for some career advice just about certain things, and he said quite publicly that he had his go, it didn't work out, and he's probably not coming back. So for us to actually get him back was really cool. He's huge on player development pathways, all that kind of stuff. So it's not like a coach where you see he gets his report card every week and then you see how he's done. A guy like Nussie is very much in the back helping out, and I think it's great that we've had him in the tent. I think it was unrealistic to think that he was gonna jump in and be full time with us. So for him to do that is great. It's another smart guy. Unfortunately, not in our camp going forward. But look, hopefully he's set it up well enough that other guys can kind of help out.
Well, the player contracting model, especially, I think it's just so important, and his expertise and understanding what can be achieved when you have a centralized model, which Rugby Australia is clearly working towards, at the very least, greater alignment. But his experiences with Rugby Australia as well, and Australian Rugby Union previously, where he was the general manager for High Performance for 5 years, he'll understand some of the levers that need to be pushed. So, yeah, it'll be fascinating to know if there's any significant change in the next little while. But we understand clearly that it's such a competitive market. I'd be really intrigued to know what his personal opinion is on whether or not RA can keep its players, or if it should be looking to afar and perhaps looking to bring more players back, a little bit like what we spoke about with Simon Raiwalui earlier. But it's a really fascinating area around the contracting models globally at the moment. And it's unlike Ireland, which has got such great tax incentives, which basically means that no Irish player ever leaves the country.
No, why would you when you get 80% of your tax back if you stay or whatever it is? It's different. And look, a guy like him understands that it's a changing market. Things move. Like we're talking about tax moving, but within our game and our sphere, things change massively in terms of where we are positioned, where our clubs are positioned, the competitions, the blah, 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 blah. And a guy like him with that in-depth knowledge, you back his understanding to find a solution. And look, he's been in the tent for a little while, so hopefully he's shared a few things. I'm sure he has. But yeah, like we said, it's one of those ones where you don't get to see that report card every week because it's kind of left to the higher-ups.
Certainly is. All right, well, this time next week, we'll be dissecting another performance, another Wallabies match. We'll see how Joe Schmidt's men have gone, but it's a really big week, and if they can mount a good performance, that'll do wonders for the confidence, because it's a long road ahead unless things can change over the next 7 days. So he's hoping from an Australian perspective. Matt, always good to chew the fat with you as well.
Loved it, mate. Cheers for that, and see you next week.
Can't wait. We'll do it all again.